Monday, December 1st. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, after a lot of other discussions, we talk briefly about how to interview tech people.
Let's do this.
So it was a Monday, and I had done laundry, as I often do on the weekend, so I could choose from any of the shirts that I own. I own many shirts. I could choose any one of them. So of all the shirts that I own, I chose to wear a blue dress shirt to work today. I get to work, and it just so happens that every single person in the entire tech department wore a blue-collared shirt today. Every single one of us.
So, I mean, how many colors are there? I mean, white, blue, darker
Green,
blue.
black, red.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like some freak of nature that everyone wears blue, one of the most common shirt colors.
But the thing is, people don't wear blue that often. I wear blue more than anyone. Most people wear green or black or something, or they wear like a sweater. But the fact that everyone was wearing blue, it was kind of surprising. We declared that we won some sort of arbitrary prize.
All right. Is that all you got there?
That's all I got.
All right, so check this out. I don't want to tell this whole story because the person who told me the story, because it's about them. If you're gonna hear it, it's gonna be from them and not a secondhand story. But basically, I don't know if I said this on the show yet. I don't think I have. Is that the person who was until very recently my boss.
Oh, you're going to tell a story that you told me a while ago and you were probably saving for a Monday.
Yeah. He was the...
See, I went with the topical, the recent, the actual thing from today.
I got more going on. I'm not going to tell the whole story of it. You'll have to wait maybe to hear that. But he tells me, and I'm pretty sure he's correct. He's not lying. He was perhaps the youngest victim of Operation Sun Devil. You can go look up what Operation Sun Devil is.
Operation Sun Devil is infamous among tech people.
It has a lot
who grew
to do
up in the 70s, 80s,
It has
90s.
a lot to do with Apple IIs in the early 80s and pirating and BBSs and dial-up modems. Right?
BBSs. I mean, we grew up on
the Secret Service.
We grew up on the tail end of the BBS days.
Right. So he apparently has he tells me he has a floppy disk that has the BBS he wrote in like some language that was only ever used to write BBSs for the Apple II. And he's got this one floppy disk, but he's got nothing he could do with it. And I have an Apple II GS. So I went out and I got a USB to serial cable, and I got a serial to Apple II modem cable, and I got a program called ADT Pro, and I'm talking to people on the internets, and all we need now is... basically, I ordered on eBay 10 brand new, never opened 3M dual-sided double density 5 1/4 inch floppy disks.
The saddest thing is that at RIT, we used to, when we were freshmen, wander around in the tunnels under RIT. And one day, we were somewhere we shouldn't be, and I remember we found a box full of 5 1/4 floppies.
Yeah.
We played with them like Frisbees for an hour, and then we threw them all away.
If only we would have known that they were rare and no longer made these days.
Much like the box of AT keyboards.
Yeah, but I won the auction for $1, and the shipping was $5. We'll see when it shows up. The person still hasn't emailed me.
Man, I remember when I bought a box of 100 high-density 3.5-inch floppies here's $45.
Right, here's the thing: is I tested it out, the Apple II, and it totally works, and the cable works great, and everything's awesome. Apparently, there is a 3.5-inch drive for the Apple II GS. If I could get one of those, then I could get a bunch of 3.5-inch discs, and I could download all sorts of Apple II software from the web and put it on those floppies and rock the house. But I need to get the drive, and so far I found one of those drives, and it was on eBay for $40, and I'm like, screw that, it's not worth it. So Apple II GS is awoken in my room. The second thing, most of our computers, right?
The $20 motherboard.
Well, the second 20. Basically, originally we all had Pentiums, right? In like the late 90s. I had a Pentium 3.
I had a Pentium Pro.
Pentium Pro.
Oh, man, I miss that thing. No, right? I don't miss that thing.
And these were all, most of these were like slot-based things, right? I mean, RIM had slot A, which is the first Athlons.
Yeah,
right?
I remember. I was so proud. I bought the AMD K7 800 megahertz.
Right. So
I overclocked
that
it
was
like
sort of
hell.
when we got to RIT. Those are the computers that most of the people brought with them. I think Alex brought an old pre-OS X Mac, and someone else. I think Greg had a K62. But that was the first generation of the computers we brought to college. We obviously had computers before then, 486s and whatnot.
Yep, and we all kind of took turns leapfrogging each other in terms of who had the baddest
anyway,
ass computer.
After that, right, after those computers went away, pretty much everyone, me, Rem, Alex, Greg, Pete, everybody, bought socket A machines with Athlon CPUs, Athlon XPs across the board. Everyone had socket A computers.
In fact,
with AGP slots.
I
Everybody.
didn't even upgrade my computer. The only reason...
And we all had DDR 400 or DDR 333 or DDR 266. That was the RAM. Everyone had DDR RAM, socket A motherboards, Athlon CPUs, and AGP. That's,
if I recall,
every computer had that.
If I recall, that was right around the era where RAM got ludicrously cheap for like 4 or 5 months. Like RAM was so cheap, it was laughable.
RAM is so cheap now, it's laughable.
I know, but back then, for what you got compared to what RAM had cost just a little bit before, and what it cost a little bit after, because remember, there was that earthquake, and then RAM prices skyrocketed.
Yeah, that earthquake was in the news for a week, and then we forgot about it. Anyway.
But then RAM prices were up for a while.
And I was using that NF7S socket A motherboard with the XP 2500 up until less than a year ago when I bought my current, Core 2 Duo.
Hey, I was doing Geeknights, this show, on that old Athlon slot or socket that I bought when the slot blew up.
Yep.
Until when I bought that Mac.
So as a result, we all bought these new computers that have Core 2 Duos and LGA 775. But we have all the computer equipment lying around the house, besides, the Apple II GS and the Mac 512K and the Mac Mini, is all socket A equipment. We got lots of socket A motherboards, lots of socket A RAM, lots of socket A CPUs. I've got 4 or 5 of them.
We've got 9 power supplies to go with all this.
Yeah, I've got 9 power supplies that are compatible with this. We have a lot of socket A computer equipment. And the thing is, if you go on Newegg, there are exactly 2 socket A motherboards you can buy. One of them is is $1 zillion. Oh, it's not $1 zillion, but it's very expensive because it's a mini ITX. It's one of the ones that's meant for, very tiny computers. So that's really not useful. The other one is a $20 piece of crap. Now, I had a lot of socket A equipment, and I've only got 1 working socket A computer. I've got 5 or 6 motherboards, 5 or 6 CPUs, a pile of RAM sticks. Who knows which are good and which are bad.
We've even got 3 perfectly good ATX cases.
Yeah, I've got cases, I've got power, I got everything, right? And a while back, I tried to buy a $20 motherboard on Newegg, and it worked for a while, and then it stopped working. So I was like, fuck it. But I think that was a micro ATX job. That was because I had a micro ATX case.
I point out that was also in that one case that always seemed to break motherboards.
Well, because that's the thing, is the micro ATX case comes with the power supply because the regular power supply isn't going to fit in there. And I think that power supply was a killer. Anyway. So I said, you know what? Let me try again. We've got 1 working socket A computer. It's in the hallway. It's like the house server for doing DNS and whatnot. Let me try to this is my last shot at a socket A computer that works. So I paid $20. I said, you know what? Even if it doesn't work, $20, big deal. I won't even bother returning it. It kind of works, but not really doesn't work.
It's amazing to me.
And it's just too much trouble to actually make it work all the way, if such a thing is possible.
I remember when I was a kid in high school, before I even went to RIT, and I was I'd saved up all this money and I cashed in a bunch of bonds, and I was building my first computer from scratch.
You built your first computer from scratch with money from bonds? I worked for an entire summer.
No, I worked for that summer too. I also cashed bonds. I
didn't need to cash bonds.
I made more money from that job than the computer cost. The computer was $4,000.
Yeah.
But that included...
When I got my first part-time job, I spent basically... I bought a Game Boy and was it? I think it was a Game Boy Color and a bunch of games. But then I didn't buy anything until I had $1,000, and I bought Pentium 3.
But I point out this $4,000 got me, among other things, a SCSI controller.
$4,000. I spent $1,000.
Well, that included every single accessory, everything, and a desk chair.
See, I kept the job, and I basically got the base computer, and over time bought up the accessories.
Remember, I bought everything all at once, like right before I went to RIT.
But even then, not all of it together cost $4,000. It might have been $2,000.
That included the SCSI card, the TV tuner card.
Oh, man, I used to buy stuff from buy.com and then mail them checks.
Yeah, but remember, I had that Aver TV USB.
Oh, that was pretty funny.
That thing was like $140. That thing was not worth $140.
So the result is I sort of gave up on trying to get the $20 motherboard to work. I was just like, after a couple hours, I'm like, just fuck it.
But this Scott's ordeal made me realize, I spent all this time and I built a computer. And then I remember thinking, I've attained this skill. I will every few years build new computers forever. And I was excited about it. And I've built a few computers since then, but far fewer than I expected to have built.
I build, one for myself about every 5 years. But in general, I build a lot. Or, it's weird. It's like I look around at how many computer parts are there. And I'm like, damn, I did a lot of computer building. When the hell did that happen? This is only my third computer I'm using that I've built.
Of course, a lot of this stuff we got from side projects. Like Pete would upgrade and we'd have his old processor and we'd try to make it work. And the thing is, all the equipment we have that isn't in a working computer was something that didn't work immediately in some other project and thus was just discarded, because if you have 3 socket A processors and one doesn't work immediately with no effort, you just toss it and grab the next one. You don't even think about it.
So I've got all this socket A computer equipment and I can't seem to construct a working computer out of it, even though I have theoretically enough parts to do so, assuming that one of each part is working, properly. So I just want to get it out of the house now. I'm done with it. I'll keep the socket A computer in the hallway that's working, and the rest of it I either want to sell or recycle or just get it out of the house.
Well, I think what pushed Scott over the edge was the fact that you spent, 2 hours total working on that thing, and it didn't work at the end of that 2 hours.
Yeah, it didn't work perfectly. It didn't work enough to actually be a computer that would turn on and function.
Yes, because the goal actually, we want to use one of these computers to make a Windows gaming box to run NS.
And see, that's the thing is a lot of the parts I have, it's like if the part goes to waste, I don't care. Like I got 2 Duron 900s. Who gives a shit if those don't get used? They're pretty useless. But I've got this GeForce 7000 series AGP 8X card. Now it's AGP, so it can't work in any modern computer. No computer has AGP anymore, but it's a working, perfectly good card that could actually play Half-Life 2 games. I just need a computer that has an AGP slot for it to go in, but I don't have such a computer. So it's like I have this good part going to waste because I don't have other good parts for it to function with. And I don't want to, if I'm going to buy a whole bunch of parts, I could, go on the forum. I posted an amazing machine for $700. So.
Well, see, that's the thing. It takes 2 hours of your life to get this thing working barely. And
but for $700, I can get a work of art.
For $700, you can get a computer that's 4 times faster than anything we could cobble.
I could get a computer faster than the one that's on my desk, which is really sad.
Yes, it's moving so quickly. For less than $1,000, I could build a computer that's almost, all told, twice as fast as the one I use now as my primary PC. And I'm really tempted periodically. I play a game like Left 4 Dead, and my FPS is only 40. Maybe I should upgrade.
So if anyone wants some socket A computer equipment, if you want the small stuff like some CPUs or some RAM or something like that, or if you have a use for that video card, let me know and I can mail it to you. If you want cases, motherboards, power supplies, the big stuff, you got to come here and get it because I'm not going to mail it. It's too big.
All right. So anyway, enough of that, because if no one wants it, we're going to donate it to someplace in the Bronx.
We're just or maybe we're going to find someone just to get it the hell out of the house.
Also, if anyone wants a 12-inch VGA CRT.
Oh, hell, if you want a 17-inch LCD, that's perfectly fine. We have extras.
It's weird. I remember we bought this LCD for Geeknights to bring to conventions for, when we take the Mac and set it up on a table and record stuff. And I remember it was a big deal. Yes, we should buy this. Let's just spend the money. Let's do it. Now we have 3 LCDs we're not even using.
Yep.
Times are changing. Anyway, in actual tech news, because we talked about that for a while, there was an article on Slashdot. Basically, HP decided to go after this open source vendor because the open source vendor was revealing HP's, quote, confidential pricing.
Confidential pricing.
Yes, you see, HP, like pretty much every enterprise vendor out there for enterprise stuff, does not actually advertise their prices for any of their enterprise products.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
if you-
it's one of those situations where, I mean, an enterprise thing, it's understandable because there isn't really a price. It's not like, this gigantic server setup costs X. It's you go and you
Well, no.
negotiate a contract with the salespeople and they customize it to what you need.
Well, no, you see, you'd think that,
And-
but we're even talking about just software, like just a ticketing system, let's say, anything like that. It's not that there isn't a price, because there is. There is actually just a price. The thing is, they'll always originally, always, if you just ask for a price or you find a listed price, it'll be like 4 times what the actual secret price is.
Mhm.
And what they'll do is they'll publish that. And I didn't realize this at first. When I got into the IT industry, I was young and green, and I went to this company, and I was like, not the company I'm talking about in the article, but some other company. And I was like, yeah, I'd like your software. Can you give me a quote? And they were like, $200,000. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, fine. And I take that quote to my boss, and my boss looks at it, and he's like, demand a 70% discount or tell him we won't buy it. And I was like, that's kind of ballsy. And he was like, nah, that's the way it works. Trust me. So I called the guy back, and I'm like, listen, I need at least 70% off. And he was like, all right. When it comes to this stuff, it's not that there's no price and they like fiddle it to make sure that they make the most money out of you.
It's basically there is a price, but by saying this higher price first, idiots who don't know better will pay this ludicrous extra amount of money.
I
Is it
guess
an
that-
idiot tax?
It's an idiot tax, and more importantly, it's for the bean counters. Because I'm the tech guy. I know I need this software. It's the only software in the world that does the specific ludicrous enterprise thing that I need. So I go to the company, and they give me a quote. And then I say, all right, now give me the other quote with the discount. And then I take the 2 quotes to my bean counter, and I say, look, I saved the company $700,000 by negotiating this discount.
Yeah, because everything, that's one thing, is that at any company, IT is nothing but cost. IT doesn't, unless you're a tech company, IT doesn't make you any money whatsoever. It's just the cost of doing business.
So thus, as an aside,
any company that does something for reals and just has IT supporting that something for reals wants to minimize IT costs as much as possible. So,
as an aside, I will point out that if you want to know if the company you work for is smart or not, the simplest way to find out in a hurry is to see how the management that is not technical regards the IT, computer science, whatever department. Because if they regard it with disdain or they're constantly trying to cut its budget, that means that they don't understand the value it provides. They've kind of fallen into that trap that if you
or
don't,
it's a shitty IT department that's not providing the value.
but if that's the case, just get rid of it and outsource.
Yep.
But a lot of times companies, you get into this problem where if an IT department works very well, like everyone is very skilled, you will never even notice that they're there. Like you won't even realize they're working. Like nothing ever goes wrong. No one thinks you're doing any work. So bad bean counters will look at this and say, well, if nothing's ever breaking and we never see them doing any work, we should fire half of them and lower their salaries and take away those servers they're using.
No, what do you know? Everything's breaking. It just breaks all the time, and even
kinda
when
like
no
how
one does anything.
They always say you can tell the worth of a society by the way it treats its prisoners. You can tell the worth of a company by the way they treat their prisoners, aka the IT department.
Yeah.
But all enterprise stuff is like this. And this open source company, what happened here was they got the prices, the quote unquote prices.
Oh.
So they basically said,
So they got
look,
the fake prices and said, look, this is the fake price of HP's solution. Our solution is open source free.
well, it's not open source free because they provide a solution.
Yeah, well, the program is free and we provide the support for this incredibly tiny cost compared to the fake cost.
Yes,
of
according to the article, what they charge is 82% less than what the HP is charging.
But HP probably charges 82% less than what they charge.
Yes, but the thing is, the HP and the enterprise industry in general realize that if people could compare prices legitimately, if there was just a quote, like I could see what another company paid, their whole house of cards comes tumbling down because this stuff does not cost that much. And a lot of this is markup and a lot of it's the BS. So I can say to my bean counter that I did good.
Well, really, the big problem is that, an enterprise application is something that companies desperately need. But even then, you don't sell that many copies. It's not like Photoshop where you sell a bajillion copies.
Yes,
or
how
Windows
many people...
where you sell a bajillion copies, right?
How many companies in the world will ever need software like Remedy?
Right. So, but, you know, there are companies that desperately need Remedy. It needs to be made. There's a demand. It can be filled. There's money to be made.
Now, granted, I have my opinions
the
on
demand
Remedy.
is only maybe like 100 or a few hundred companies, maybe a few thousand if you're lucky. If you sell it for $50, you get $50,000. So I hope that you made Remedy with one developer in 1 year, that your $50,000 paid him and you broke even.
Granted,
right? So
more and more, I'm of the mind that
you need to sell enterprise software for a lot more money in order to make a profit, because you're not selling that many copies.
I'm feeling more and more, though, that in many cases, the cost of enterprise software is not justified compared to what it would cost to hire in-house developers to make a specific thing that works for you.
Yeah, the problem is finding developers who are good enough, because they, you know,
yes,
and have the knowledge in the appropriate subject area.
Yes, I mean, the example is always like hospital software or like financial software. The subset of people who know programming and the subset of people who know complex like debt instruments or hospital stuff, there's not a lot of overlap there. And you're not going to find some open source guy who's like, man, you know what's totally awesome? Writing accounting software for car dealerships.
Yeah.
I'm totally going to do that in my free time.
And, you know, if you do find someone who has that overlap, say they really know how to manage hospitals and they know how to write software really well, guess what? That person is probably just going to write that software on their own and sell it to every hospital instead of letting themselves be hired by one hospital on a salary and writing the software for one hospital and one hospital only.
But anyway, this reveals a wider problem in the technology world and even just the commercial world, in that there are more and more people relying on obscurity of their prices for their business models. I mean, how many websites or retailers have rules where they don't let other people advertise their prices?
Yeah, I mean, how many times do you go on Amazon and it says price hidden, click here to see the actual price, because they don't want like the super discounted price to be indexed anywhere on Google or anything.
Yes, and I'm starting to feel like in the end, there needs to be some sort of regulation or some sort of consumer right that pricing information is public domain and cannot be in any way restricted.
I think that's, you know, that I think this shows just, you know, how the free flow of information and the free market are sort of inseparable, and, you know, many people try to, you know, have one without the other or vice versa.
And there's a lot of this.
And it really, I mean, look at your company is all about keeping some information secret and keeping some other information not secret.
Well, the thing is that actually saves people as opposed to harming them, and it makes the market flow better.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing is, it's like, well, you know, this keeping this information secret saves people at HP and helps them go better.
Yes, but it does. There's a different. I don't know. I feel like pricing at least to get it, because I could go into the very deep specifics of what my company does, and you know, a million.
That
other
is
companies.
true. Is that at least, you know, with the stocks that, you know, your company trades stocks and whatnot, you can look up the prices of a stock just like on Google Finance or whatever. It's not secret.
Yeah, but it's I feel every industry is different, everything is different. But in general, if someone publishes a price, if someone is willing to sell something for some price, and I find out what that price is, I should not be restricted in telling someone else what that price is.
Yeah, unless you sign some sort of thing.
Yes, but if I didn't and I find out a price, or if a price is publicly available, or in fact, if any information is publicly available and I am not bound by any sort of NDA that I have agreed to before seeing said information, then that information, it should not be illegal or against various contract laws or whatever to redistribute that.
Yeah, you can't
or to
copyright.
that.
It's not a work. It's not copyrighted. It's not a logo or anything. It's not a trademark, right? It's not, unless the product is not yet available or something, it's not insider information. And unless it's, you know,
and it's not
unless it's like
heavily,
the codes to the nuclear weapons, it's not a security issue.
And it's not a heavily regulated industry. Like, part of the reason why stocks are so different is that there is a very heavy-handed government presence in stocks.
Yeah. So if there's none of those things that we just listed, then any piece of information should be allowed to be freely disseminated. It's freedom of the press. That's how it works.
Yes.
Right.
So that's all I really have to say about that. It's one of those situations where I brought up the article just to discuss a topic.
Yep.
But all I have to say is I went to my boss and I was like, I got a 70% discount. And he was like, good job. Because he knows better. It's so great working for a company where everyone knows better.
Yeah. Other bosses might be like, really? So holy shit.
Of course, I didn't realize until later, but when I worked at the hospital, I was on the opposite side of that. I just never did the negotiating, so I never knew. I never realized.
Anyway, so this is a really interesting story, I thought. People, when they think of robots, fighting in wars or anything like that.
Robots.
They think of, science fiction, doomsday, robots killing everyone with laser beams, Matrix.
Hey, hot mama. They kill all the humans?
Exactly. They think about the Matrix. They think about all that sort of stuff. And with very good reason they think about those things. However...
Well, because robots have such a long and colorful history of killing us.
Of course. Even Astro Boy's talking about this kind of action. But there's actually... people are, of course, that military's researching everything. And of course, they're researching autonomous battlefield robots. It's not, we have the technology to do something in this area.
Now, as far as I am aware, no doctrine of U.S. military strategy has changed. I believe. Now, I'm talking based largely on things I read a long time ago, but as far as I'm aware, the doctrine of our military is that regardless of what electronic systems are in place, a human must always make the kill decision.
Yeah, I think that's how it is now.
Well, that's kind of like currently the universal doctrine of automatic killing.
Yeah, we've got robot drones that fly, but they don't drop bombs or anything. And if they do, someone else is looking at like a camera and pushing a button that drops the bomb, whatever like that.
Yes, a human always makes the decision to engage a lethal device.
Yes. But what's interesting here is that normally people would go, let's give you the Matrix, don't do that, don't make killing robots. But actually, there are some things that are actually better about robots being in wars than people. Take, for example, a person, in a battlefield situation. They're afraid. They're very paranoid that, every person they see, especially like an Iraq kind of situation, is actually like a crazy suicide bomber.
It's a concept I actually was unaware of, and I read a fascinating couple of articles about it, but it was situational. I forgot what the term was, and I feel like
it says here scenario fulfillment.
Scenario fulfillment, that's the one. It's this whole idea that if someone expects a certain outcome based on their training or their life experience, even if the situation they're in will not necessarily lead to that outcome, they will take action subconsciously to cause that outcome to occur anyway.
Well, actually what it is that if you, let's say you think that, a suicide bombing is going to happen, right?
Yes, you expect it.
Right. So you look around you and, you basically anything around you that may hint at a suicide bombing, perhaps a guy with a trench coat or, those pieces of information, the guy with the trench coat, a guy, winking at some people, stuff like that. That information, those things, you will observe those things and they will stick in your mind and you will notice them more and you will notice other things less. And thus now, you expect a thing to happen and now everything you see makes it look like that's going to happen. It's like, oh my God, it is going to happen. Because you expected it to happen, your brain sort of sees it coming and turns everything around you into hints of it coming and ignores everything else that's going on. And thus, people are very likely to get panicky and make all sorts of mistakes. Whereas a robot, if you had some evil Terminator style AI,
or if you run into the Asimov problem where you make the very specific rules, but then there's the one condition that doesn't really jive with the rules, and then horrible things happen.
Right. But the robot doesn't have these problems. Robot isn't going to like panic and just start shooting like crazy unless it's broken and it's got a bug in it. It doesn't. It's not afraid of things. It doesn't.
Well, I guess the theoretical idea is that simply
it doesn't have all sorts of nasty human problems of like going crazy in Vietnam and becoming a psycho.
Well, I guess it's that a human can be programmed by training, but at the same time, all humans, ourselves included, believe it or not, are fallible. And you can't program a human to behave in a specific way 100% because we're human. If you could program a human that way, then that kind of belies our ability to choose and think and all sorts of things. But humans can react in irrational ways. They can be frightened. And theoretically you can program a robot so long as you have a sufficient means to program it effectively to always behave in a specific way. So a robot, if you train it and you train it properly, will always behave exactly the way you trained it.
Yep.
It will never deviate from this course. So say you had a sentry robot that's guarding a checkpoint, and it is instructed to, give 5 warnings if someone approaches without identifying themselves. And it gives those warnings in various different languages. And it only shoots if this specific final threshold is reached and the specific number of warnings has been given.
Yep.
As opposed to a human who, if they see a Jeep driving at them quickly, might fire on it before they realize that behind that Jeep there's something else going on, or the Jeep is trying to slow down.
Or maybe their friends are driving the Jeep and they stole it, and it, even though it's a disguised Jeep, who knows? It makes all sorts of mistakes, and they properly program. But there's other advantages to a robot as well. For example, there's a robot. You can't really capture it and make it a prisoner of war. It doesn't really work. You can't interrogate it, and someone can always self-destruct it, or from far away.
Of course, there is still the primary ethical concern I've always found with autonomous killing machines, or even remote killing machines, is that it removes all of the kind of danger or immediacy of warfare from the person engaging in it. So that
also, if we ever reach a point where it's robots fighting robots, it really becomes like, why?
Yes.
You're basically having a fight of money and science. You might as well just play a game at that point, which is what we should do anyway.
Yes, well, Europe turned to soccer a long time ago. Things have turned out rather well for them.
Yes. Now we need robot soccer.
But there's also the
we
problem
have that too, actually.
I mean, imagine, occupying Iraq or occupying a country, an aggressive war against an enemy state currently. People from our side, your side will die. There'll be casualties, there will be consequences, but if you could eventually wage an occupying war solely with autonomous machines, then the only danger to a state that is belligerent is economic, and there are no longer lives on the line. And that, in a way, if a society isn't prepared to be much more discerning in when it engages war, it kind of removes one of the natural checks and balances of the world, that even if you go to war for a good reason or a bad reason, war hurts and it forces you to think about it at least a little bit. If you remove that check, you either need a much more enlightened society or you need to just not engage in warfare at all.
Yeah.
Maybe at that point you shouldn't have the automatic killing machines.
Probably not. But it's interesting, though, because usually, the first thing people think of when they think of war robots is, the Terminator, the Matrix, or anything like that. And for someone to come out and make a pretty decent argument for why there probably should be, robotic soldiers of, some kind, that's, it's pretty interesting.
Well, I remember reading, and this was a good 12 to 15 years ago. I remember reading an article about a system that had been designed, and actually they've come a long way since then. I got to see what the stage is. I'm sure there's an article about it, but it was a machine that was designed to, it has microphones placed all over the place, and if a gunshot is fired, it could pinpoint in less than a second exactly where that gunshot originated from. So in a combat zone or in a peacekeeping situation, if the technology were sufficient, like an example of one of these machines could be a robot that identifies and then, if necessary, fires upon any combatant anywhere in a zone, thus denying the ability to engage in hostilities to anyone within a certain zone, which is a very interesting peacekeeping idea.
Yeah, that would be a very good idea, except that things like walls exist, which is a problem.
Well, yes, but at the same time, the gunshot if the gunshot originated behind the wall, I don't need to worry about the gunshot hitting anything.
Well, no, but like, for example, this machine that has the microphones and, say, a sniper rifle in it is on the other side of the wall. I kill someone on this side of the wall.
Well, yes.
The machine doesn't kill me. I'm okay.
But it's got all area denial devices, only deny a specific area.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I have a mine, so I bury it somewhere. Someone might walk around the mine.
That's right. Okay.
We shouldn't use mines anyway.
I just think that to conclude this news bit here, I think that this just demonstrates that the perfect soldier is, of course, some sort of cyborg, twisted, half man, half machine, as everyone has always known.
Some sort of abomination.
Yes,
some affront to God and country.
That is been obvious for a very long time. This is just more on the pile.
In fact, I think it must essentially live entirely within the uncanny valley, perhaps at the deepest trough.
Some combination of Golgo 13, and Johnny 5.
But anyway, things of the day. I stumbled across this kind of randomly, and I think it's pretty damn cool. I don't know who this guy is. I didn't do any research on this whatsoever, other than watching this video and a couple of related videos. But this guy it looks like they have a research team, and they've come up with a very low impact, very low technology, very efficient, and very fascinating way to regreen and reclaim land that has been lost to desert, particularly in the Middle East, and turn it into useful cropland without having to divert any water from anywhere else or any substantial resources from anywhere else.
So that's pretty interesting because, isn't the definition of desert like a place with less than X rainfall?
Yep, but there's more to it
so
than that.
where does you need water, and you need a certain amount of it, no matter what, right? I mean, you can't just suddenly, if they can magically grow trees with no water, holy crap, Nobel Prizes all around, right? So they got to get the water from somewhere.
Yes, well, the idea is that even in the harsh deserts where there is very little rainfall, there is still enough rainfall. The problem is what little rainfall there is either evaporates immediately or hits this soil that won't absorb it and it washes away. That's why in the desert.
So why? But I mean, like I was in the desert and I spilled some water and it absorbed into the sandy dirt.
Yes, the sandy dirt. So if you poured a ton of water, it would absorb all it could absorb at the surface and the rest of it just washes away. And two, that's why you get these flash floods in desert places so often. And beyond that, the soil itself.
Oh, because when it actually does rain, very little of it goes into the soil, and the rest of it goes whoosh.
Yep, and if
there's a flood.
And if there's only a little bit in the soil, like you just spill your water, it's going to evaporate out of the soil like that. And
because it's very hot.
So they came up with this interesting way of kind of using the contours of the land and just like mulching and making these troughs that'll catch water. And the very little rainfall there is, if you just catch it properly, is enough to grow a whole ton of fig trees and citrus trees and mushrooms and all sorts of neat stuff. I suggest you all watch this video. I'm going to try to do some more research and see what the results of this have been and how feasible it is. But this is fascinating stuff. And I always like, because, people always tend to focus, especially on, tech shows and podcasts and in the Western world, on the very high-tech solutions to things. What's the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of, every science, every technology. But at the same time, the bleeding edge and the cutting edge often take a lot more resources and require a lot more infrastructure. I mean, a device that could, by cranking it, purify water, even if it was very inefficient, would do a lot more good to poor parts of Africa than even the fanciest modern osmosis device.
Yeah, there are plenty of water filtering things going down, though.
Yes, but that's a good example. The things that help the third world the most are often the very robust low-tech solutions. I call this the AK-47 syndrome, that a low-tech but very well-constructed, very easy to use, very easy to manufacture, requiring very little pre-existing knowledge solution is generally much better for helping people who don't have a lot of resources at their disposal to kind of take control of their own destiny and help themselves rather than forcing them to rely on technology they could never understand because they don't have the infrastructure or the education already to use it. And I love solutions like this. So I hope that we see more things like this in the future. And I think that this is really the way we should be going in terms of helping the third world.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it works. I just question whether, you can't do this to all the desert. You're only going to be able to do this so much before it doesn't work anymore.
It seems like the places this is most useful are marginalized people who are living on the edges of deserts. And I mean, there are a lot of parts of the Middle East where people are living in places that people really shouldn't be living, but that's all they've got.
Yeah.
So for those people,
well, I mean, think about it. For years and years and years, all desert people, like Bedouins, were all nomadic. They moved around, and then there'd be oases, right? So it's like, you got a desert, but you have an oasis, and an oasis is like a real thing. It's not just in the cartoons. They exist very much, and it's like, if there's an oasis, why can't if that can exist, why can't the oasis be bigger?
And in the past,
why is there an oasis here? Why can't there be an oasis 2 feet next to it?
And part of the problem is that, the Western world and the modern world, we advance, and then we go to these third world places where there's not a lot of existing infrastructure, and we use our known existing solutions that, while they work great in our industrialized societies, they rely so much on like petrochemical industry and, steady streams of electricity and highly skilled manpower that they don't work in areas where that infrastructure doesn't exist. And building that infrastructure out of nothing would be a gigantic catastrophe for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to get into.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is neat. I don't want to spend more time on it now, but watch this video, and it's
the video is pretty but once you sort of got to watch it for a minute before you figure out what's going on.
Yeah, the audio's good. The slideshow is kind of...
The guy has a funny voice.
Yes, he does. He's got a big chin, too.
All right, so my thing of the day, I don't know how many people know about like RSA secure IDs. Basically, the way they work is it's a little thing you put on your keychain and has an LCD screen and a battery, and it generates a different random number every, like 60 seconds? Something like every minute?
It's like every 6 to 10 seconds, I think. I forget.
Anyway, you look at it and there's a number on it, right? And you have a server somewhere. You have to buy this server. It's the expensive RSA like verification server. And that also has numbers in it, right? And they're two, basically, you have a little computer and a big computer, both generating numbers, right?
And they rely on precise timing and known seeds for random number generators. So that whatever number is showing up on my completely separated keychain, the exact same number is ready for me and me alone to log into the server.
Right. So I want to connect to my work's server from home. I look at my little keychain, I type the number in, and I push enter.
Nope, that's
I
not
also
just
type
that.
in my name and password.
Well, no, what you do is you type in a PIN that is known only to you, something you know, and you type in the number on the key fob, something you have, and then the two of those together, two-factor authentication, it is incredibly secure.
Yeah, it's like your ATM card, Oh, someone knows my PIN number. They don't have my card. Someone has my card. They don't know my PIN number.
Of course.
Something you have and something you know is like the ultimate in security. I mean,
well, the thing beyond that is the extension of something you have, which is something you are, aka biometrics.
Yeah. But, something you have, something you know is fucking secure. As long as the something you have isn't easily duplicated, like, say, a key. Like a physical key.
Yes, right? or in spy movies, you cut off the spy's finger, then you press it against the thing.
Right. But an RSA key, unless a guy steals it from you, and even if he does steal it from you, he needs to know something.
Yeah, he has to know two things.
If a guy steals the key to your house, he can open your house. If a guy
he doesn't know your address.
He might know your...
That's why people say you should never put your address on your keys.
Well, definitely shouldn't do that. That's just fucking stupid.
That's like putting your PIN number.
I actually don't like how
don't
like how car keys sort of identify what kind of car they go with. It should just be a key. It shouldn't have like, a Ford logo on it. Anyway.
Yeah, of course, we don't need to talk about the fact that all locks are, according to the internet and a lot of study, trivially breakable and openable by anyone who knows anything.
Right. But anyway, there's a company called Yubico, and I think they're a Swedish company, right? Yeah, and they made a thing called the YubiKey. And you can just
buy... That's a good name. I like it.
You can buy these, and I want to try to get 10 people to buy them. That way I can get the price down by $5 per key. Basically what this is a lot like the RSA key, only better, right? And how it works is it's a USB thingy, right? So you put it in a USB slot, and it has one button on it, and you push the button. And so you look at it, and there's no like LCD screen on it. So it doesn't need a battery like the RSA key does. It's a lot smaller, right? And basically, you push the button, and when you push the button, it's actually a USB keyboard, and it types in this number. So if you open up your text editor, and you push the button a few times, you'll see it type in these numbers every time you push the button. And it's sort of like a one-time pad, sort of reading itself off.
Yes, I'll admit, neither one of us has read like the white papers or.
Yeah, it's not perfect. I gotta read exactly how this works, but I'm just doing it as a thing of the day for now.
Yes, because we're very interested in it, and believe me, if we decide to buy these and we actually start using them or something, there will be a whole show dedicated to these things.
There's a Security Now episode actually about it too, where they talk to the person. Whatever.
Yes, if you want to find out our opinions on how secure they are, just listen to that Security Now, which we haven't listened to.
Right.
Because we'll just parrot whatever it says for the most part.
Probably. So basically the way this works is you go to, say, a website, and you type in your username, you push this button, and you're signed in, as long as the website supports YubiKey. Now, the thing is, somebody made a YubiKey OpenID thingy. So any website, you can use the YubiKey to log into OpenID, and then use the OpenID to log into a site. And they've also got it going with SSH, and they've got it going with PAM, which means you can log into a Linux machine with it, and it's pretty good stuff. Now, the best part about this, right, is you buy these little keys, which are $25, but it's $20 if you order more. This discount pricing for bulk orders. And RSA, if you want to buy RSA keys, you got to pay for the keys. You got to pay for the server. The server's like $1 bajillion, right? You can't afford that. It's got, you need to get this, even with the 70% enterprise discount, it's still too much money.
Right, I'll sum this up. Open source people will jump all over this most likely, and you will be able to implement something that is very likely almost or as secure as RSA Secure ID on your own for very little money.
Actually, the server, they've written it. The company that makes the keys wrote the server. It's open source. It's already, you can just go and get it and work with it and, sort of make, anything you want work with YubiKeys. So it's just a matter of time for more people to make it work with more things. And even if it just works with OpenID and, your Linux machines, that's enough to make it worth it, to make those things super secure. Hells yeah. It's something to keep an eye on, especially if you're really concerned about security. And because it's just a USB keyboard, it can work with any computer that has USB. It doesn't freaking matter. You don't need any special software or anything.
Scott, you got to get it to work on the Apple II GS.
It doesn't have USB.
Make a dongle.
I guess I can. I have the USB to serial to Apple II modem port cable. I guess maybe it would work.
Maybe you could use that analog game controller port.
No, because it wouldn't power it. No, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Anyway.
So you might have noticed we went longer than usual for the whole show up to this point, because I guess it's, now that we have this half schedule, we had a lot of tech news and a lot of things of the day and things queued up. So basically we got to this point where every topic we brought up was something we have a lot to say about, probably a whole show's worth of stuff to say about. So
it's funny how that sort of happens unintentionally.
It's good in a way, though, because it's not like the old days where we'd be scraping the bottom of the Slashdot barrel for the Monday news every week. We'd be reading science articles. We have no idea what they're about. Like, yeah, this is awesome. The Samaflange, they invented a new one.
Samaflange. All right.
What's a Samaflange?
All right, so...
So we were going to do this show on, this whole show was supposed to be about, hiring in IT and CS. Like, how do you... Not from the perspective of how do I get a job in technology.
Even though that's what someone emailed us and asked us.
Yes, but we've done a bunch of shows about that, I'm pretty sure. But the idea was, on the other side, how do you pick out a good candidate for a technological job?
Yeah, because right now, with the bad economies and whatnot, there are plenty of out-of-work tech peoples from, various companies, and they're looking for work, but most of them are no good. So if you're at a company and you're you're looking for a tech person, because even when the economy is bad, good tech people are hard to find and everyone needs them. How do you know if a tech person is good or crappy? It's very difficult.
Yes.
Very, very difficult.
And I'll admit, because we've been, hiring people off and on, and I've actually had the opportunity to be party to many interviews with potential candidates here. And I sat in on 1 or 2 interviews at IBM and at the hospital, and it's often very difficult to interview technological people because on one hand, you want to vet their skills, but on the other hand, I don't know, I've always felt awkward asking people very technical questions like, what's the command to do this? Or, all right, so you said you know this. What are the 4 parts of the Samaflange?
Yeah, it's like you either end up asking sort of like stupid like test questions for like shit in school, like, what are the 5 aspects of blah? It's like, unless someone's just out of college, they don't know. And whether they get the right answer or not doesn't show whether they actually know what they're doing or not. And sort of, to give someone a real test, you'd have to like put them in front of a computer and sort of watch them try to solve a problem that is, like the problem you want them to solve if you were to hire them.
You really, like when I ask questions like that, you always feel like you're kind of like you're implying straight up that you do not trust that the person is being forthright with their credentials.
Yeah, it's like if the person was actually a good tech person, you ask that kind of question, they'd be stupid, they'd, be very annoyed. Like, Google asked me those kind of questions, and they were like, don't look it up on Google. So, being honest, I didn't. And they were the kind of questions you'd see on, like, a test in college, the kind of thing that nobody knows except for someone who just went to college. And it actually made me not want to work there because the questions were so insultingly annoying, stupid questions.
But what I've realized, and what Scott's realized as time has gone on, that really the best way to interview tech people comes down to the simple truism of it takes one to know one. And it seems like I found that if you're talking to someone, and the best way to interview is just to try to talk to them as though you would talk to any of your technological friends. Like, just engage them the way you would engage anyone else you work with or anyone else you know who is technical, and see if they reciprocate in kind or not. I mean, it's telling right away whether or not they know. I mean,
like I could go up to someone and be like, yeah, have you ever heard of Django? I'd be like, oh man, it's got this, great database object model. It's pretty awesome, And he was just like, yup, that he's not demonstrating to me that he knows what I'm talking about. But if I, say things like that and they go, oh yeah, and it's all I've heard, it's a lot like this other thing that has a whatever. And they use also the complicated words that laymen wouldn't know, and they use them correctly. They're demonstrating to you that they know what they're talking about. Like, I could go, let's say I went to go interview for a job as like a carpenter, right? And, the carpenter would be like, have you carpented before? Yes. What carpeting have you done? I built houses. What houses did you build? Big ones.
Or consider the difference between...
How many? 100.
Consider the difference between these two questions. Do you know your way around a samaflange? Yes. So, do you prefer a samaflange or a blamaflange?
And why?
Yeah, or, we use samaflanges here.
I like samaflanges because the name sounds better. It rolls off the tongue.
But there's, I think the most telling thing I ran into was that, if I ask people questions that basically amount to how would you find something in a bunch of log files, like a really simple question. It's one of those, do you actually know your way around the Linux command line, or are you just saying you do because you installed Ubuntu once? And it's what verbs do they use? I mean, to many people I talk to who don't really know, and further questioning proves that they don't really know, will say, well, I would search through the logs. And people who know would say, well, I'd grep for the unique ID in the logs. And the fact that they use the verb grep instead of the verb search tells me more than any other, anything else I would have asked them. That simple difference tells me right away if they're worth talking to or not.
You basically have to ask them questions which require them to say the complicated, insider words, right? Like, if you ask them, do you know C++? They'll be like, yes, I have 100 years experience in C++. I'm a C++ master, right? But if you're like, in C++, what kind of, what's your favorite X? And they have to actually know what an X is and then, name one and, explain why it's their favorite. Like, oh, I like the one in the STL because, this reason, or what, they have to actually give a real answer that requires them to say, like, if you're the carpenting, the same thing, ask someone a question where they actually are required to say something about, like, some sort of wooden structure, as opposed to just saying, yes, I can build stairs. It'd be like, do you like to build stairs in, which style stairs do you like to build the most? It's like, I need to know, now I need to know different stair styles. If I can't name a stair style, I'm fucked.
Yep, so do you like to build staircases or stairwells?
If someone doesn't know the difference, it's like big trouble.
And two questions in particular is instead of saying, do you know your way around the Linux command line? Can you work without a graphical environment? Just ask, so what text editor do you use? Or what shell do you prefer? Because they might say, yeah, I know my way around Linux, but if you ask them what shell they prefer, they've got to know the name of at least one shell.
They got to know what a shell is, and they got to be able to name it, Even if you ask a question like, do you like VI or Emacs? Well, they could just basically say, oh, I like Emacs, or oh, I like VI. If you say what text editor to use, they need to know what a text editor is, and they need to be able to name a text editor. And
yep, and it's also very telling, because if they say... I don't
Notepad.
know, then I know better. I know that they do not know.
Yes.
And if they say Pico, while Pico is silly, at least they know what a text editor is.
Yep.
Sadly, that's pretty much it.
I think the real problem is that if you want to hire a tech person, right, but you don't already have a good tech person at your disposal.
Well, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the only option there is to not go for the technical knowledge route, but to go for the is this person very smart route.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not hard to figure out if someone is smart by interviewing them. Just ask them difficult questions and see how they answer.
Yeah. I think another good thing is if you might not have like a tech person on staff, but there are plenty of tech people around who maybe you could like get them to help you out and be like, hey, is this person smart? Here is like their resume, or hey, is this person smart? I recorded the interview with them. Listen to this tape. They said some complicated words there. They bullshitting,
Yep, like at RIT when I sat in.
There are plenty of tech people on the internet who will talk to you.
I sat in on interviews with like other people to work for the ITS department, and pretty much like they would always have people sit in, and the hospital did the same thing, just technical people. Or even when I interviewed at Nature Magazine a long time ago, they had a tech guy just sit there. He didn't ask any questions. He just sat in the room while I talked to the big guy. And the only purpose of these people is to, after the person leaves, say, yeah, he knows what he's talking about, or nah, he was just using buzzwords.
Yep.
And I guess it's really, really obvious to tech people, and it's not obvious to HR people.
It's obvious. It's really, we say tech because that's what we are, but it's the same in any profession.
Well, when I say tech, I guess,
if a graphic designer was interviewing, some other graphic designer, they could tell right away if the person was saying like, oh man, what Photoshop filter do you use? It's like,
I guess instead of tech, I guess experts. Anyone who's an expert in their field can tell experts in their field from people who don't know their field at all.
Yeah. Now they can have a real problem if you have someone on your side who is actually a dumbass. Then a smart person comes along. The dumbass will think the smart person is a dumbass, and then you're sort of in a trap. Which is, I think, another compounding reason why IT and basically tech departments tend to either be all smart or all stupid.
Yeah, I very rarely run into a case because if it's all stupid. If a smart person gets hired by accident, they get the hell out.
That's right, because they get pissed off that everything is so stupid. They get frustrated and they leave.
And if it's all smart people, well, the stupid person can't possibly get hired.
That's right.
So there's really no way to have a mixed bag IT department unless you have the giant bureaucracy that acts in such a capricious and random way that it hires a 50-50 balance.
Well, what can happen a lot of times is a company that is big enough has many tech departments. So you'll get like this R&D department with all these smart people, but then like the people who do all like, the switching for the company network are complete retards. Stuff like that can happen, but or maybe you get like a bunch of like the higher ups in the the department's so big, maybe the CTO and the developers are real smart, but the IT guys and the help desk people are dumb, stuff like that can happen. But
so honestly, the
people who actually work together in tech, directly, coworkers, who see each other every day and sit next to each other are either all smart or all stupid, most likely.
The one thing I do want to bring up really quickly before I end this travesty and go to bed is that personality does count for a lot, and
it sure does.
Never pick the person who's perfect in every way if when you ask them what they do outside of work, don't have an answer.
Right. Some guy comes in, you'd be like, what's your favorite IDE? And he's like, oh, I like to use Eclipse, but really like text, and he knows what he's talking about. But then you'd be like, oh, what do you do after work? He's like, oh, go home, watch TV, go to bed. Don't hire that guy.
Because
even if he's smart and maybe he'll work hard, is a really boring person.
Well, there are two kinds of people who do not really answer when you ask them what they do outside of work. One kind is the person who is doing something that they don't want their employer to know about, which is fine because usually that's something really awesome.
Yeah, it's like the guy's not going to tell you in a job interview that he runs the BDSM dungeon, even though if he does, you should probably hire him because he's totally cool.
Yeah, if I was interviewing someone for an IT job and I was like, so what do you do outside of work? And he was like, I run the BDSM dungeon down in Newport.
I'd be like, you're hired. As long as he knew what a tech he was talking about.
Yeah, but I'd be like, oh, so that's your hobby? Anything else? And like, yeah, I ski too, people like that. But most people I've found who don't have an answer actually don't have an answer. Like I remember back at the hospital, I was helping interview someone, and they were pretty technically qualified, but when I asked the guy what he did outside of work, and he didn't really have an answer, like he didn't really do anything. And the thing he said was, well, I don't really have any hobbies or anything. And to which that always just,
so that
I think
not only
mind,
tells me that he's a boring person that you don't want as a coworker.
I think beyond that, I think, so why are you getting a job? Like, is work going to be your life? What's your life? You work because you have bills to pay to live your real life. Or have a job that's awesome, and the job he was applying for was not awesome. Therefore, and he didn't give off the vibe of like, I'm a Russian hacker who's escaping the law, and I'm hiding my Russian hacking hobby.
I mean, if somebody doesn't have a thing outside of work that they're working for, then either A, their work is it, which means they better be, they better be like the company owner or something where the work is their thing.
Or it's just they're passionate about what they're doing.
Right.
But no one's passionate about low-level IT.
Right. Or, the question becomes, even if this person can do this job, do they have any motivation? Will they care? That, you know what I mean? Like, I work because I can have money to do things outside of work. If I didn't do anything outside of work, then why would I work? I would just be a lazy ass bum at work, not caring so much. If you have something else you care about and work supports that thing, then that caring transfers over to the work.
Plus, speaking from experience, the place I work now just is so much more amazing in terms of just the level of intelligence at all levels compared to everywhere else I've worked and everything else I've ever done in an official non-Geeknights, working in the real world capacity, which also includes most of my classes, back in school. But the one thing that really stands out is that every single person in the place I work, all the technical people, all the HR people, everyone, they have big things they're doing outside of work, things on the same level of Geeknights for me. Everyone, they're doing their doctoral theses, or they travel the world all the time, or they're a professional chef for fun on the side. Everyone has this full-time hobby or this really big family or something crazy outside of work, and work is great and they love their work, but work is just one part of their lives. And I noticed that most of the other places I've worked, work seemed to be the only thing these people had.
Yeah, people would stay late on purpose to not go home to the wives.
As opposed to staying late because they really want to finish that awesome piece of code they're working on for the algorithm Bafmadad.
Yep.
And on that note, I kind of want to go to bed. I think we'll just stop it right there.
Yeah. And if you're, I guess, for the people who are interviewing for jobs, just do it in reverse.
Yes. And if you have an awesome hobby, even if you think your employer might think it's bad, just let it out there. Because
don't hide anything. Just answer every question completely openly and honestly. And if they don't like your answer, you don't want to work there.
I used to hide Geeknights from employers.
I never hid anything.
I do. And the fact that now Geeknights, not letting it in my resume, but Geeknights and the anime convention stuff I do, and even the RIT Anime Club, they're all on my resume, straight up.
Yep. I mean, if you made some cool YouTubes, slap that on there. It might, don't slap on, say,
don't slap on the video of you
YouTube
shotgunning 9 beers while being tased.
Right, but do.
Unless you're going into a job that requires you to be able to act under pressure while being tased.
Yeah. But if you made a silly, animation, right, of, say a video game character, say mashed up with some anime you like, it was a little 5-second happy, cute, even if it's as long as it's a non-disgusting, 4chan kind of thing, be yeah, I make animations, and that sounds really impressive. Just, even though they might, in reality, it's 4chan animations, they will never check.
Well, I'll put it this way.
They will never check.
PAX was really fun, and I'm really proud to have, presented a discussion at the Penny Arcade Expo, because not that many people get to do that. But it sounds putting it on a resume or explaining it to someone who doesn't really know what conventions are like, it sounds so much more impressive than it is. Things like
what in reality? We stood up in front of a room with 100, peers in it, and we said, "Hey, what's up, guys? Check this out, Burning Wheel. Woo! All right, let's go have fun. Bye."
Yep, but just all the hobbies and things on the side. I guess we're turning this back into the how to get hired. All the things you do on the side always sound, or actually are, a lot more impressive to other people who haven't done them, because the more you do awesome things, the more you'll start to trivialize them in your own mind because they become easy for you. I mean, if you're a juggler and you become an awesome juggler, things that are amazing to people who can't juggle, you don't even think about because you do them all the time. So you'll start to forget how impressive they are to people who aren't kind of into that thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Going to bed.
Yep.
Yeah. This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com. where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.